Ten wyciszony. Raz, dwa. Raz, dwa. Ja podejdę.
Albo niech nam powie, gdzie są te światła.
30 sekund jeszcze.
Raz, dwa, trzy, raz, dwa, trzy. This is the English channel, 1, 2, 3. We are starting at 4:30. This is just a test. We are only testing the channel. We are testing the English channel. The presentation of the report will start in 4 minutes. No safe passage, migrants' deaths at the European Union Belarusian border. This is a test. This is a test. I repeat, this is a test.
So this is the test now. It is the other interpreter who will continue the test. Please let us know when we can stop testing. Okay, if you have given us a signal that it's okay, end of test.
Nie jest jakoś rewelacyjnie, ale widać, tak? Czyli pani by chciała światło zgasić, tak?
Słuchajcie, jeżeli wy to czyli wolisz mieć tak?
Teraz mam ustawione wszystkie kamery tak kolorystycznie pod to, co jest, nie? Znaczy,
Dobrze, ale jeżeli będzie
wydaje mi się, że robiliśmy próbę, to
dobra, jak
było
jeszcze
widać.
próba jest ok i było widać
No,
to.
nie ma,
Jakby
nie
było
ma.
bardzo to tak, że
Ja zgasiłem, tu też się paliły, to też zgasiliśmy. Te bardziej są takie wyciepane w dół.
My name is Marianna Wartecka. I am a Partnership and Advocacy Director and Board Member for Ocalenie Foundation. And before I will invite our speakers to talk more about the report, I would like to say a few words. I was asked by the interpreters to speak slowly, so I will try. And this is also a request to other speakers. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon. It is very important. We appreciate your presence here a lot. We are very happy that we have representatives for ombudsmen and ombudswomen for children offices among us, representatives of various embassies, representatives of UNHCR, and international NGOs, as well as local Polish NGOs working with migrants and refugees. Special thanks to those of you who are directly involved with providing humanitarian assistance at the border. Thank you for doing that. It has been almost 3 years, so thank you for your determination, your resilience. We usually meet in set circumstances, and today's occasion is no different, but nevertheless, it is always very special to see you and to talk to you. Thank you very much for being here. This publication, this report, is the first complex publication covering the whole length of the border between European Union and Belarus. And it is a consequence of a collaboration between 4 organizations. All of them are present here. Thanks for that as well. It's Human Constanta from Belarus. Welcome. I want to help refugees from Latvia, sorry. Sienos Grupė from Lithuania. And Ocalenie Foundation from Poland. Thanks to this joint effort of our 4 organizations, we managed to document deaths of 116 people who lost their lives at the border between the beginning of the humanitarian crisis in the summer of 2021 and until the end of March 2024, when the process of gathering data for the purposes of this publication was closed. Since then, since March 2024, another deaths were documented, and today this tragic number is 130. 130 people lost their lives at this border. And those lost lives are the illustration of the discrepancy between European Union democratic and human rights values and the practices of its member states at its borders. I would like to thank and appreciate the authors of this unique publication. It is Enira Branickaja and Alena Cekowicz from Human Constanta, Anna Grike and Eva Raubiszko, from I Want to Help Refugees, Oshrin Gugelajte and Dalia Krapowickaite from Sienos Grupė, and Alicja Paleńska from Ocalenie Foundation. And you will hear from the authors of this publication or the representatives of the authors of this publication in a few minutes. But I also want to thank another co-creators and supporters of this publication, without whom this publication wouldn't have happened. So first of all, to Maria Beburia, who was the coordinator of this very demanding project. Thank you, Maria. And Dagmara Rollirat, who was the financial coordinator of this very demanding project. Thank you, Dagmara. And special thanks to those who shared their experiences, their knowledge with us: Paulina Bownik, Piotr Czaban, Aleksandra Gnap, Lucyna Marciniak, and Katarzyna Mazurkiewicz-Bylok, for everything that you shared with us, and to other humanitarian workers, activists, translators, and lawyers who shared the testimonies of people on the move for the purpose of this publication. Thank you. Big thanks also to Marta Szymanderska-Pastryk and Klaudia Ciobanu for your input to the Polish part of this publication. To Watchdog Poland, who helped us with accessing public records for the purpose of this report. And the members of monitoring of the team that monitors border deaths, Natalia Ciastoń from We Are Monitoring, Aleksandra Gulińska from We Are Monitoring and Grupa Granica, Małgorzata Harasimowicz from We Are Monitoring and researchers on the border, and Natalia Judzińska, researcher on the border, Polish Academy of Sciences and Grupa Granica. And to Alicja, again, who is also part of this team. Thank you for consultations to Doctors Without Borders and to Jakub Ławniczak and Tomasz Pietrzak. For the academic review of this publication to Zuzanna Dziuban. For proofreading to Michalina Pongowska and Annabel Chapman. To Kaja Kusztra for graphic design. And to Maciej Moskwa for all the photos that he has taken since the beginning of this crisis, not only the ones that we used in this publication, even though they are very important for this report. Thank you, Maciej. Many thanks also to our friends at the Batory Foundation. Thank you for having us here this afternoon, and thank you for all your efforts supporting democracy and human rights in Poland. And last but most definitely not least, thank you to the German Marshall Fund of the United States who funded this publication, for believing in this project and for great cooperation along the way. Thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Joanna Kopacka from the GMF to say a few words.
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation and for the opportunity to say a few words. I must say I feel very humbled to be here with you and to speak on behalf of the German Marshall Fund and the teams at the Engaging Central Europe team and Fund for Belarus Democracy. But today is definitely not about us, it's about this publication and the incredible urgent work that you've done and that you will be discussing here today, which I think really illustrates that democracy is not an empty word, it's a practice. It's a practice of standing up for fundamental human rights of those who are on the move, who seek refuge in Europe. And the practice of holding the state authorities and its institutions accountable to the public, of ensuring that citizens have the right to know, and a practice that I believe can be based on empathy and solidarity across borders. And I think this project really did embody all of these values. I just want to say congratulations and thank you to everyone who was involved in the project.
Thank you. And now we can move to the main part, so the presentation of the project, and we will start with the part dedicated to Belarus, and we'll start with Enira.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. It's really important. I just said to colleagues that when I saw so many people, I can say that finally I have a feeling that we did something important. I will start a little bit from the history, and I don't know whether I should move it or how.
Give signs.
Okay, give signs. Thank you. I just want to move to start a little bit from the history, because I think it's important to think about this. Belarus was always transit country for asylum seekers, at least from 90s. And this is something that I think a lot of people, at least in Poland, forget about this. So, I mean, there was times when Poland was respecting international standards about asylum seekers. People were applying at checkpoints and border officials were accepting these asylum applications. The first crisis started in 2016 with change of the government. At that point, border officers stopped accepting or started to quite subjectively, not regularly, to accept these applications. And in Brest, in our border town, several thousands of people stuck. This is actually how my organization appeared and how we start to work with this topic. We started to monitor, we started to help people, and I mean, we finally realized that this problem is existing, because before it was never nothing like this, and I mean we had no idea that something like this happening. So from 2016 people, border officers already were not accepting applications for asylum, so as I said, did it very unregularly. But in 2021, of course, the situation was a little bit different, but still I'm trying to say that this is not something new. In 2021, current crisis was, of course, authorities of Belarus helped to create it. They invited people, they were selling these touristic visas to Belarus to come to Europe. Several touristic companies that were working under state control in Belarus were selling these tours to Europe, in fact. So in 2021, this was reaction on sanctions against Belarus, and Lukashenko said that he will not take care of border any longer. So in Belarus towns, more people appeared. More people appeared on the streets, in hostels, in hotels, in supermarkets, people that we were not used to, because they I mean, they were different to Belarus people, and people started to pay attention to this. We started to analyze what's going on. Very soon, of course, we've heard about violence on the border, about pushbacks again, and it was clear that this is just the beginning of all this. But what I want to stress again, that very soon, actually, authorities, in a way, lost control over this situation. And again, I want to say that many of these people who arrived, they had no idea where they were going. And I mean, they were buying really tours, and they were, this is just to say that in 2021 and spring 22, we had evacuation flights from Belarus back to Iraq. We had a huge voluntary return program from IOM, because when people realized that actually they bought tickets to forest to cross the border irregularly, many people just said, no, that's not what we came for. So they fled back, but of course not all, because still many of those who arrived, they had no choice. They really wanted to ask asylum, and they stayed in Belarus, and they keep doing these attempts. Already on August 4th, 21, Belarusian Border Committee reported the first death. From this moment, Belarusian Border Committee regularly were reporting about cases of death on the border. They were reporting about those who died on the territory of Belarus. By the end of preparing this report, by end of March, we had 47 at least 47 cases of dead people on the territory of Belarus. As of today, we have at least 55. So for 3.5 months, 8 more people died on the border on the territory of Belarus. We don't know about any case when their bodies were repatriated back to their home countries, and most probably this never happened. Just to tell you a little bit about Belarus today and current situation. It's still going on, this situation. Probably you know that there is almost no flights to Belarus, but still we have flights via Turkey. So it's still possible to arrive from any country to Belarus by flight, but of course it's much more expensive. So most of the people today arriving via Russia. So it's not a purely Belarus situation. It's neighboring countries. It's, Russia is also involved in this. But of course, it's much less organized now. But people arrive into Russia, and then we don't have border between Belarus and Russia. We don't have checkpoints. But however, these people need visas to Belarus, but they don't have it. And this is making these people immediately irregular on the territory of Belarus. And that means that they're already very vulnerable on the territory of Belarus, and that means that they can be manipulated easily by Belarus authorities, by law enforcement, and this is something that needs to be taken into consideration when there is discussion about that these people voluntarily, for example, throwing stones to Polish border guards. So people still coming. From what I want to say also that from 2020, we had unprecedented attack on civil society. More than 1,500 civil society organizations were liquidated. Our organization was liquidated, then we had another organization created deliberately to work with foreigners and their rights on the territory of Belarus, and this organization is in process of liquidated due to this report. Because we sent so many requests to our authorities that they finally pay attention to it, and I mean, it's closed. We are not longer on the territory of Belarus, but we are still working on this topic. We are working with people on the territory of Belarus. But I want to stress that there is no one helping irregular migrants on the territory of Belarus now. No one. No organization, and any volunteers today that can do something actually may face criminal charges. Because we have criminal responsibility for acting from the name of non-registered organization. Not a lot, up to 2 years, but still it can be used easily for any volunteer that is just on his behalf, on her behalf, decided to help someone. And last but not least, just to stress, there is no access from Belarusian side to border zone. It's like what is called in Poland Sistema. For us, this is border strip. This is 10 kilometers zone that was fully under control of Belarusian State Border Committee. It was always like this. It's only with the permission of Border Committee someone can enter it. Even emergency services need to coordinate with Border Committee if they want to enter it. And then we have additionally 30-kilometer zone that is also quite restricted. We never worked in this area. We never sent volunteers there. We never been to forest. This is a specific situation in Belarus. We never called people to go there. We were helping these people differently, but this is something that was always a problematic in Belarus. And last but not least, we are very much relying on state information. Most of the information in this report are from state resources. We also send in requests to state officials. We are still receiving some answers, but we at the same time trying to say that this information can't be relied fully, because we know that our authorities, I mean authorities of my country, manipulate with information. They're giving information that they want to give, and they're hiding information that they want to hide. For example, the figures of death cases in 2023 higher than in 2024 or 22 or 21. However, much more people were in Belarus during 21 and 22. But at this moment, as the figures of statistics are lower, just as official statistics, most probably just because it was not good for Belarusian authorities at this time to speak about dead people. Now they are much more interested about this situation, and that's why they're using these figures more. However, we are still considering that it's not less than the border committee is reporting. That's what I'm trying to say. It's at least 55 people died on the territory of Belarus. Thank you.
Thank you, Anira. I will just want to add, I forgot to say you that we will take questions after we are done with all 4 presentations, so you can keep them, but please ask them when we are done here. And we will now move to Anna Grike from Latvia, from I Want to Help Refugees.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity of being here, and I will speak today on the behalf of me, myself, and Ieva Raubiško, with whom I co-wrote the Latvian part of this report. So first of all, I will just take over and re-emphasize what Anira was saying about also Latvia-Belarus border, and just also taking the beginning from the 90s, when the border again became a closed type border. Migration was not something special. And people, for instance, in 90s who were fleeing Chechnya also were coming in Latvia. Then after 2008, people fleeing Georgia also were arriving. In mid-2015s, around these years, Vietnamese people were choosing this road to come to Latvia. And until 2021, more likely in kind of public or media discourses, the border was represented from time to time as somewhat being active, also in terms of different merchandise trafficking, and from time to time covering some people who have crossed the border. However, it all changed in 2021. The next, when this very simple border of 173 kilometers turned in what you can see here depicted on the photograph. So when the first groups of people arrived in late July, early August, it was not immediately the decision to push people back was not taken immediately, and the government took some time to install the state of emergency in August 11th, 2021, when those people who were already, for instance, also having been provided some food and given some who were already in Latvia, it was just a matter of one day, one night, that they were divided into small groups and pushed back to Latvia. And I would say that since then nothing has changed. Even it had the situation on the legal grounds, it has even worsened. In May 2023, pushbacks were installed in the national legislation, so it's not no more a state of emergency, but it's already something that is written in. And during these 3 years, it was only a very short period of time of maybe a month last year in February, then with having a very few or none people trying to cross the border, that these restrictions were lifted. So within this all and the restrictions, so what happened also was this instauration of untransparency of what's going on at the border. So we have that in Latvia 2 kilometers of restricted area at the border, and the restrictions are still in place. Without a special permit, no one is allowed to go, and it's very difficult to obtain it. And any allegations of violence, for instance, those who are more following on the topic, the Amnesty International report, which was published in October 2022 about border violences in Latvia was completely rejected by Latvian government. Back then, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, now President of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs, just described these allegations as being bogus, so just being a fiction. So this is kind of this attitude which was and still is maintained by local authorities. And just to re-emphasize, maybe just going to the next slide. So these numbers of people who are pushed back and those who are accepted is the core discourse how government is communicating about the situation at the border. These are daily statistics which are then summed up and presented to public. So a certain number of people who are pushed back daily and very few of those who are accepted, but since it's not the topic of today, I will not go into detail since this acceptance is not happening at the border and it is more difficult than that, but still it is somewhat also which is really reproduced by media, and this is what we have found out is slightly different, for instance, from Poland, where media is also more involved and taking not this only one-sided attitude on the situation. In Latvia, I would say that State Border Guard and their discourse is just reproduced by media, and also to emphasize that their strategies of communication are also very rethought. And there has been, and there now I arrive more to the topic of the report. So maybe the next slide. This is the only time when a State Border Guard has communicated on its own initiative about what we could call a border death. And why I have also translated a little bit in detail this article, it happened in late December 2022, when two people who crossed the border from Belarus to Latvia arrived in Latvia in a very already severely bad situation. They were taken to the hospital, and afterwards one of the men died. And as you can see here on the slide, that and this is only a part of the entire article that was written, even not the title of the article indicates that we are talking here about border death. It is more about some activity taken, and what is more aggravating is that to what is the blame put on about what happened. Just to quote, so such atrocities on the part of immigrants and the Belarusian authorities are categorically unacceptable. So at this point, for instance, violence is still not being taken as accountable from local authorities. And this person, and lately on, some months later on, another woman also died in a hospital. So these two people have died after crossing the border in the hospital. But just to coming back to this date, on 20th December 2022, when the first person died in Latvian territory, it was only 2 weeks later on that my colleague Ieva Raubiško, who was in contact with a group from Syria and went to the border area to provide, and I would say it was one of the rare humanitarian interventions which took place in Latvia, again, on the opposite of Poland, where you have very, very elaborated activism at the border. It's not the case in Latvia. It is, I would say, I would not say that it's unimaginable, but still, to some extent, yes, it is. It would be very difficult. So, and what happened when Ieva Raubiško went to encounter the group of Syrian people who were also in very bad condition, criminal proceedings were pressed against her, and the case is still ongoing. For providing humanitarian aid, she is facing accusations of facilitating and smuggling people into Latvia. Again, yet another strategy from the government to threaten any humanitarian help assistance at the border. And it was in October 2023, and I would like to ask the next slide, when also an example I'm elaborating on in the report about people who have died and buried on Latvian territory as identified. In some, we do have 4 such cases. And also it is a matter of communication. It was on late October 2023 that State Border Guard published a video, something that is done very rarely. From the Belarusian side, there was a video of people carrying apparently a person who has passed away. And by filming and by doing so, the aim was not to allow the people to cross in Latvia. And some days later, in an interview in the occasion of the anniversary of State Border Guard, a journalist asked a question to the chief of the State Border Guard of Latvia. So, but have there been any cases in Latvia that people have been encountered and identified and died after border crossing? And he replied that yes. And this kind of communication was kind of, I would not say that state authorities, they're not lying. This is true. And then afterwards sending a request also in the context of this report, we did receive and we have a confirmed from public authorities deaths of 4 people. And now maybe we can go to the next slide. The graves of which you can see on this imagery, a very, I would say, distant graveyard chosen, I would guess for particular reasons, burying that is done in a very, very rushed way, and still no public announcement done from state authorities about these people, and no particular processes of identification or at least trying to find out who were these people, and no, for instance, also trying to establish contact, for instance, with the NGO. Also, I'm representing, I want to help refugees, try to understand and go in depth. This is very, I would say, representative of the situation in Latvia in regards both border death and border communication, and the situation, how it looks from, I would say, NGO's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, very much for sharing the context in which you are working in Latvia. And now we will move to Ocalenie Foundation from Sienos Grupė in Lithuania.
Yes, hello. The situation is quite similar to the Latvian one. Lithuania has been a transit country for at least a couple of decades before this humanitarian crisis began. The pattern changed in June 2021. When about over 470 people were registered by VSAT, which is like the Border Guard Services of Lithuania, for the first time. And in the following months, that number grew up to 4,000 people who were registered for processing and put in detention camps in Lithuania. During the following months, in August 2021, that was the official start of pushback operations, and over 2,000 pushbacks were registered that month alone. In July, the state-level extreme situation due to a mass influx of foreigners was announced by the government, and that is what allowed these pushback operations to be started. But in Lithuania, in these official government statistics for pushbacks, they are not termed that. That is not the terminology that they use. They use the term turning around. At least officially, there is no way to track how many times the same group, for an example, the same few people were turned around or pushed back. But that is according to official government officials, but we have reason to believe that that is not the case, or hasn't been the case for a while. And they seem to be at least having some kind of list with names, at least. So in August 2022, barbed wire fence was finished, about 550 kilometers long, as well as a robust surveillance system across the border, and that, including actions from the Lithuanian government, tried by putting pressure, at least, on Belarus, resulted in a change, and another change in the pattern of migration, and that was sort of the beginning of this more intensified migration through the Belarusian-Latvian border and then into Lithuania. that number of people grew 20 times compared to the year before. Of course, there are still cases of people entering Lithuania. Even yesterday, we had a group of Cubans with a child that who entered Lithuania, but were quick to be discovered and were pushed back. Usually, we as an organization, Sienos Grupė, we are not so specialized like here in Poland. We try to cover all of the different fields of migration and not only humanitarian aid by the border, but also legal aid and integration, and also missing people and deaths, disappearances. In April 2023, the Lithuanian Parliament voted for this unofficially called pushback law, which solidified kind of this practice of pushbacks, and also the 5-kilometer border area that is not, well, that people could not enter before without special permits, but also this kind of solidified this. And in this law, it is specified that VSAT, these border guards, they are the ones who are to evaluate the health condition of the people in need, and they are to decide who gets to enter the country. And that has been kind of, obviously, I think Alicia will later maybe mention this, or maybe in Polish you already did, but I did not understand that they are not equipped, perhaps, and not willing to do these evaluations properly, and we have had people in critical condition also pushed back into Belarus, and some of them remain missing to this day. So, in general, Sienos Grupė, me specifically, I work on this topic of missing people and dead. We've received, at the time of this, when we finished this report, it was over 110 missing persons cases. Now that number is like about 130, but most of them have been discovered. We have 8 disappearances that are long-term, and 3 of them we for sure know that the last location was in Lithuania, and for the other 3, I believe, perhaps these people were pushed back into Belarus. Of course, the humanitarian crisis is mostly marked by the deaths. And in the case of Lithuania, we've had 2 deadly car crashes, car accidents, after either police or border guard cars tried to capture these vehicles that were transporting migrants. In one of these crashes, 2 people died. One of them was a driver, also an immigrant, but not an irregular one. And in the other case, also a woman passed away in this accident. So the other 2 deaths that we are fully aware of, that are 100% verified at the moment, are forest deaths of people who, one man who died of hypothermia, and the other one's cause of death could not be determined fully. During the writing of this report, a 3rd body was found. This differently than from the 4 bodies, 4 deaths that have been recorded in the media. This 5th one is only so far recorded by Sienos Grupė. It was a skeletal remains of a body found in a location that we have searched for before of a missing person. This is the only pre-trial investigation for a missing person that we have kind of have going in this country at the moment. We helped the family with starting this, initiating this, and we hope to follow through till the end. Sadly, seems to be that recently we had this conversation with police that this might be this missing migrant. So that is what makes these 5 deaths. And yes, the system in general to look for missing persons is quite complicated, even for us to navigate. We have had cases of legal representatives not being able to enter, let's say, camps or border patrol points where a person is being held, being refused entry, and being told that no, they're not actually here. They know they were never here, even though that is a lie. So that is even more complicated, of course, for families abroad who do not have legal representation inside the country It is incredibly difficult. The authorities seem to be not very willing to provide this kind of aid. When it comes to, in the context of this report, we sent multiple requests for different government institutions. The hospitals replied to us maybe 50% of the time. One hospital forgot to mention that there was a death, like a migrant death that we knew about in the premises when they were writing this answer to us. So the information is not very complete. The municipalities, most of them replied, and they gave us actual, more detailed descriptions, and we corroborated the information that we knew from the media. When it comes to these letters, some government institutions wanted us to reach out to VSAT, which is the border guard services, thinking that they would provide us with the answers that we need, but we reached out to maybe 30 different posts and camps, but we received no answers to our information requests from these institutions. So in general, I guess what I want to emphasize is that in Lithuania, it is not that the government institutions, they are capable of helping. It is that I feel like they are unwilling to fix this issue, and they are maybe perhaps even motivated not to help in some cases. The communication between different institutions is very poor. The data that some institutions choose to collect and then choose not to, it varies greatly, and even the institutions such as the prosecutor's office, when we wrote this request, we received an answer that seemed to be very it seemed to include non-irregular migrant deaths, for example, were included, and then other deaths were excluded. It was completely, such an important institution should have perhaps more answers and more fulfilling answers, I guess, and that is not something they could provide us. So, in general, in Lithuania, they're unwilling to help families of missing migrants, and unwilling to cooperate in general with NGOs. Sometimes that data information is specifically on purpose hidden from even in organizations like Red Cross. And yeah, I wanted to say something else, but I forgot.
Thank you, Oshrin, for explaining the situation in Lithuania to us. Alicia Palenska will talk about the findings of the report regarding the situation in Poland, but also as the editor of the report, she will tell you a little bit more about the report's methodology and how the data was collected.
Yeah, thank you. As my colleagues already explained, this route via Belarus was frequented at least since the 1990s. But also, as Anira Bronickaja told us already, the practice of not accepting asylum or international protection requests on the border, on the Polish border, is a practice of Polish border guards at least since 2016. In Poland, the symbolic beginning of this particular crisis of migration and asylum policies started, which then quickly became a humanitarian crisis, because with people on the move not having access to shelter, food, water, medical aid for many days, and being exposed to violence, that constitutes the humanitarian crisis. But so for the symbolic beginning of this crisis situation was in August 2021 in Usnarz Górny, where 32 Afghans have been stranded by Polish and Belarusian officers. As it is visible on this photo, they were surrounded by officers from both countries, not able to move any direction to Belarus or to Poland. And there are multiple requests for international protection were ignored by Polish border guards, even though independent observers were there with them, and Fundacja Ocalenie assisted those people with handing those requests to border guards. Polish authorities reacted similarly to Latvian and Lithuanian, with restricting access to border area and attempts to legalize pushbacks. And access to border area was restricted for non-residents, such as including the media and non-governmental organizations, which could be independent observers. State of emergency was introduced on September the 2nd, 2021, and was later changed to the temporary prohibition of stay until June 2022. And both acts were condemned as unconstitutional by various commentators, yet the new government, which is in power since December last year, and before was in opposition to the Law and Justice government, introduced similar measures last month, calling it this time the buffer zone. Attempts to legalize pushbacks were made in each country, as my colleagues already said, in various moments of this crisis. In Poland, it was already in August 2021, with a decree, and later in October with actual amendments to the Act of Foreigners. And those amendments allow for ignoring requests for international protection and for immediate turning back of foreigners who cross the border irregularly, so they can be pushed back. And border guards should register those events, including data of the foreigners which are being pushed back. And they also should issue a decision for a foreigner to leave the Polish territory, so that there should be an actual document confirming that. However, most of those events are registered only as numbers and then communicated to the public, and without registering the data of people who are being pushed back, which is a serious problem when it comes to searching for missing people, since their presence in Poland is not registered. Tens of thousands of pushbacks were performed since the beginning of the crisis, and with more than 9,000 registered since the new government took power in December. In reaction to this inhumane border politics of Polish government, various activist groups and non-governmental organizations organized to provide humanitarian and medical aid to migrants in Polish forests, and indeed there was like a specialization of and some kind of division of work between those organizations. So we also provide legal assistance for asylum seekers, but what's important in the context of our report, the grassroots organizations also have taken upon themselves various difficult tasks which are usually performed by authorities, which include searching for missing people, including searches in the forests, which sometimes end with finding a dead body. In these cases, those organizations often help in identifying dead migrants and contacting their families. And later they also support those families with the contact with Polish authorities, organized burials or repatriation of the body to the country where the family is. And they also include, this also includes gathering funds for those actions, because it is very costly. And Podlaskie Ochotnicze Pogotowie Humanitarne, or Podlasie Voluntary Humanitarian Emergency Service, as well as Grupa Granica, are already as I said, specialized in those actions and have serious experience in this type of activities. And this way they fill those institutional gaps, which may have various reasons, from practical limitations of authorities, for example, the police, which should be searching for missing people, but from the experience of the activists, it seems that the police is, for example, not sufficiently staffed to actually perform those searches and to engage in, for example, identifying the family of migrants whose body was found in Poland. But also it is, of course, the systemic unwillingness to perform those duties by authorities when it comes to foreigners crossing the border, crossing this particular border irregularly. And Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights is observing this issue in the field of searching for the missing, and will present its conclusions in August. However, I can already tell that they are showing how this practice is very systemic, even though the law is actually well written with regard to searching for missing people. In practice, there's a very clear unwillingness to follow the law or to do those duties properly. Now, to sum up the situation in Poland, until now, I will not be talking about like the situation until March 2024, but for now, because as we already mentioned, those numbers changed. At least 40 people on the move died in Poland since the beginning of the ongoing humanitarian crisis, and another 45 migrants died on the Polish border on Belarusian side. And I will now explain the general methodology and how we got those numbers, and as well as outcomes of our research developed by the whole team during our work on this report. And well, during this presentation of all of us, you could see on some slides, you could see this line which is going through some slides. It is a timeline of the crisis, which is with each documented migrant's death represented on the timeline. You will find this timeline in the report. The data for the timeline and for the report in general is gathered from various sources. It is information obtained from the authorities via public information requests. These are also cases documented by the activists of the media or the media, as well as events communicated by various authorities. About which we did not got the information from those public information requests. For example, obviously in Belarus, well, those answers were not coming, so we, as Enira Konitskaya already explained, it was we had to rely on what is communicated by the Belarusian border authorities, but we did not get any more data than it's already there, already published. But we also mean, for example, communication from Yemeni authorities, which do sometimes communicate about the deaths of their citizens in Polish or Belarusian, actually Belarusian forests. And for the report, 116 migrants' deaths have been documented until the end of March this year and are represented on this timeline. But there is another source of data that we are also gathering, which are testimonies from communication via alarm phones, which operate the emergency numbers that operate on the border, and as well as testimonies gathered from people on the move that we encounter in the forests in interventions. So for the report, there were 26 testimonies. Right now, we already know about 2 more we already gathered 2 more testimonies. Actually, it's more testimonies that we gathered during this time. However, some cases which before were had the status of testimonies only and would not be on the timeline, meanwhile were verified and are now treated as documented. So I'm saying this to show how this work of documenting, of verifying, of gathering additional information is still ongoing, how we can also go back into the past to get more information, to be able to confirm some stories that we hear and then say, yes, this is a confirmed death of a migrant. The story that before we only knew from like one conversation, for example, with a person in the forest. And this is exactly a unique set of data. Why we cannot directly verify those testimonies, but sometimes, as I said, sometimes we do, sometimes they stay as such. So those stories about lost companions or family members who report in those testimonies about their missing close ones. These testimonies give us a glimpse into possible scale of migrants' deaths at the borders. So it should show us that those numbers which are officially communicated are not enough. This is not only deaths that are happening on those borders, and this bottom-up work is really necessary. And since the numbers in the report cover the period only until the end of March, they are now, as we already mentioned many times, they are now outdated. And this work of monitoring it is going on. So since the summer 2021 until this day, today, at least 130 people on the move lost their lives on the EU border with Belarus. And those deaths were documented, and another 28 deaths have been reported as well. We also use this data to identify the factors which are increasing the risk of death for people on the move. And the most frequent direct cause of death on the border is hypothermia. It is not, however, only because people are exposed to freezing extreme temperatures. MSF medics who work in the forests in Poland have treated patients with hypothermia even in warm months. In the condition of the forest, people are exhausted, malnourished, often in wet clothes. They have no shelter for many days, and those factors all combined heighten the risk of actually common first degree of or light hypothermia and make it become acute and deadly level of hypothermia, even if temperatures are not freezing. One of the reasons why people are exposed to this risk are, of course, pushbacks. Migrants are forced to stay in the forests for many days when they are pushed back and forth to Belarus and then go back to Poland, Lithuania, or Latvia, or are pushed back by Belarusian authorities to those countries. Other factors that we distinguish are dangerous routes, including also pushbacks through rivers. As many as 11 bodies have been found in border rivers. We also observe, as Ocalenie already said, that there is this concerning trend of dangerous driving as an effect of car chases by the authorities. 5 migrants overall, it was in Lithuania and in Poland, died in car accidents after being chased by law enforcement. And finally, we also observe insufficient preparation of various authorities to actually deal with those situations in the forests. This issue concerns various situations in which migrants' health and life may be at risk. Border guards, for example, as Ocalenie also explained, are not able to assess health condition of the people they encounter in the forest, yet they are to decide if the person is taken to a hospital or if the person is, the migrant is being pushed back. So those decisions are taken by border guards who are absolutely not equipped to make those decisions. In Poland, moreover, local paramedics, those who should come in an ambulance when being called to a patient, still did not, after almost 3 years of the crisis, they did not develop a way to reach the patients who are in the forests in a location described by coordinates. Instead, they still ask for a street address, which is, of course, prolonging the whole process of a person getting help. The medics operating at the border with humanitarian groups also note how ambulance dispatchers, they ignore the statements of those medics about the need to call an ambulance, and instead they instead of sending medical aid, they send border guards to the spot. And again, as we know, the border guards are not equipped to assess the health condition of a patient, but still those dispatchers rely on border guards' decisions, not on medics' decisions and assessment, which also prolongs the time where a person gets help. And some other issues and examples are described in the report, but it is important to note that these issues are systemic and systematic. So we've listened to the country presentations explaining the situations in each of them. In the report, you will find more information about country-specific situations, and this is a part of the content, actually, of those reports, so you can already see what's in there. So you will find more information about the history of the crisis in each country, authorities' reactions, including how much space do authorities give for civil society in this situation. And as was already, I'm really happy that we meet here in this with all of you, and because it is now visible how those situations really differ and how difficult it is in other countries, even to help those refugees in the forests. We also describe challenges in obtaining the data in each country, which also reveal how authorities are willing to cooperate or actually are not willing to cooperate with non-governmental organizations in this field. We described civil society responses to the crisis, and there are also parts on legal contexts and frameworks for searching for the missing and management of the bodies of those who have been found dead. While many of those laws and regulations are often generally similar, especially in EU countries, these descriptions show how missing migrants or families of those who died still may find themselves in a slightly different formal and legal situations with different opportunities and different obstacles, for example, regarding repatriation of a body or access to information. There's also more in-depth explanation on the methodology, as well as the explanation of the risk factors, the case studies and recommendations for states, intergovernmental and non-governmental organizations. And I will end this presentation with going back to the very roots of motivations to write up this report and for monitoring border deaths in general. Currently, only bottom-up activities of the civil society ensure that the migrants' deaths in European Union countries become visible, because even when those deaths are officially recognized by the authorities, they still remain singular individual events, and compiling those tragic events, documenting them, registering, listing on the lists as we did in this report is a necessary step to show the scale of this tragedy and of the scale of the violations of migrants' human rights. So this work will continue. on this EU border with Belarus, as are similar efforts on other EU borders. And we will be discussing those efforts with our guests from the Balkans and Mediterranean in the next part of our meeting in the discussion panel. However, what we are all connected by is this willingness to work with this subject, even it's difficult, even how, regardless of how difficult it is, we are still doing this work of monitoring and registering those deaths to document them and pay like homage to those people who have died.
Thank you, Alicia, and again, thank you to all of you for your work on this report and for all your efforts to document and register those deaths. I would like now to invite you to ask questions to our speakers. We can take questions both in Polish and English. Our speakers are equipped with headphones, so it's not a problem. And we can also take questions from those of you who are watching online, so please don't hesitate. If you have any questions, please ask.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I wanted just to ask about investigations on the part of authorities into those deaths, if you know that there are any open in your country, and if any of them look into the neglect on the part of the border guards. Thanks.
I mean, the procedure in Belarus requires them to do the check that they have to do during 3 days, and if they're suspecting that there are some criminal nature, they may prolong it till 10 days, whatever. I mean, they're doing these checks. So far, I mean, they haven't found in none of these cases I mean, they're doing investigations, yes, and also they're doing investigations about involvement of neighboring border guard. However, in cases that we really had an opportunity to follow, unfortunately not in many cases, but I mean, we had an opportunity to hire a lawyer and to make official requests, because as an NGO we are no one in this case, we are not third party. So, and of course, due to protection of personal data, even in Belarus it's existing, so we can't receive information. We either need to have power of attorney from relatives, and this is extremely complicated. But in some cases we managed to hire lawyers, so we had the possibility to see the documents of the cases. I mean, in these cases, the decision was that there was no criminal natures of the deaths, so the investigations was over. And unfortunately, in at least one case that we quite described in our report, I mean, what we found that the person was buried earlier than it was requested by the legislation. So, I mean, we suspect that in many cases people buried earlier than requested, so it's much more complicated even to influence somehow on these investigations.
Maybe from the Latvian part, I could just only re-emphasize this also the lack of communication among state bodies themselves, and here just an illustrative example of course even though it could be a state border guard authority who have encountered the body, it's directly forwarded to state police to take over the case. These are state police authorities who are then responsible, and state border guard just steps off. The reason why also they don't see this necessity to communicate about death, this is already the work of state police, but still, yes, this example, while discussing one of these unidentified people who we thought we might have an idea of relatives who were asking for their missing relative, while asking State Border Guard about the possibility of the procedure and about these unidentified people on move who have passed away. State Border Guard Authority replied that, but actually we cannot confirm that the person who has been found is a migrant because the person is unidentified.
Wow, okay. In Lithuania, obviously, when there is a dead body found, a pre-trial investigation is started to identify cause of death. So that is just typical. But when it comes to border guards and their responsibility, we have a case study in this report itself. This is the one that we chose to analyze. But longer story short is that, for example, we had a man who arrived to Vilnius from the Belarusian border, which is in the capital. It's deep into the country. At that point in time, it was not... border guards were not legally allowed technically to push people back after they had entered so deep into the country. But even though he was in Vilnius, somebody called the police, they arrested him and then gave him to a couple of border guards. And in the middle of the night, this man was pushed out. And after some days, his body was found again in Lithuania after he was pushed out and then came back to try to cross again. So there was this investigation whether the actions of the border guards were legal or not legal, and the conclusion was that nobody was at fault, that no criminal behavior happened here. So that is one very sad example and disappointing example that we have here.
And in Poland, there are investigations going on regarding the neglect of border guards and of the police. It is what is invoked is the article from criminal law regarding exactly those neglect or insufficient actions of the authorities. And it is done in some cases, only a few, and in some of them it is because the activists actually did those requests or asked prosecutors to investigate it. The Polish ombudsman is also involved in some of those cases and is checking up on them. And asking what actually happened, why a person wasn't being looked for properly by border guards, a person who finally, in the end, died because of this neglect. So those investigations are going on right now, as far as I know, for now, with no conclusions yet. Yeah, so it is happening, and also, yeah, there are generally each body which is found in public space would trigger an investigation to check, as my colleagues already said, automatically to check if any criminal activities could lead to that. So it is also always done, and some cases are already closed in Poland, but some are still going on.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one question about your fear of being persecuted by the government, because you are monitoring actions of the government, and certainly you're monitored back by the government. What are your thoughts on that? Are you stressed about the fear of persecutions?
I would say definitely not. And I was presenting this data in a seminar in Latvia where also state border guard authorities were present, and they were very curious. And they didn't know. There were those not working directly at the border, and this is again, I was really, this is something what I found, what I'm still finding out while working, while doing it, is that I still lived in the kind of idea that state border guard is, or state police, that there is like a body of state authorities which is very unified. It's totally wrong. They do not know. Someone who is working at detention center actually does not know in detail, in depth, what's happening at the border. So at this point, no, I would say no. Of course, it is, if, for instance, if you do not enter this prohibited zone of 2 kilometers without the permit. If you do not do any illegal actions, at this point, I don't have this fear personally, but maybe I'm wrong and naive.
I really hope you're not wrong. No, for me, I think since I had been in the forest providing aid, and I've experienced, I guess, situations a bit more dangerous than just writing text. I think that is not a fear. Like for me, being in the forest, I've had, you know, a loaded gun pointed at me at one point. It was far more dangerous and life risky than just working. This part I am the least worried about, actually, kind of. It's been a while since we were. It's been a while since there were any attempts to prosecute any of our volunteers, and I'm very happy about that. And the activities that we were, there were attempts to prosecute us for smuggling, also to place smuggling charges, but they were not successful, basically. So, and that is all.
Exactly. I'm not worried about being persecuted for this action, for this exact work of researching the data which is available. It is out there, so it only waits to be compiled in a report and analyzed. So this work I do not see as dangerous in any way. I was worried about myself and my colleagues when I was involved in the work, in working in the forests. So yes, this is something that for sure was much more risky, and I must say that it was a fear shared by, I guess, many of activists, and some of them were or are actually persecuted in Poland as well, and and their charge for or their involvement in smuggling people is being investigated. And when the government changed, I know that other activists also had this feeling that now we will not be challenged by the government and by authorities, because the government changed and it will be more accepting towards our actions. And that was early this year that we had those conversations, but right now in Poland this also changed. I think we don't feel that safe anymore with our activities. I mean, not mine personally, because I don't go to the forest anymore, but yeah, this fear about our activities being used against us, I guess, may have come back.
I mean, if Alice does not worry, I should not, because I'm a refugee in Poland. So, I mean, if only Polish authorities could be against our activities. I mean, it's strange in Belarus about this, like, they're of course manipulating with the information, and they're happy that we are digging this information because we are showing negatively European Union countries. Of course, we are showing something about Belarus authorities, but this is like, you know, they always, it's much more ball on the other side in this way. This, I mean, our organization was liquidated due to this report. This is fact. However, we still somehow communicating and sending requests to authorities, and I mean, it's quite strange in Belarus, but for example, yesterday, my colleague received a call, who is also here, received a call from investigative committee about one of our requests about missing person, whom we confirmed she is dead, and now almost a year ago they're investigating something about this case, and they requested our materials on this case. So we don't know what's this case going on, but I mean, this is somehow strange situation that maybe someone on the top, for example, Ministry of Interior Affairs, not responding to us because we are liquidated for them totally. They said no, but for example, from local authorities, from local investigative committees, we still receiving answers. We are always receiving answers from a border committee, but so, and I mean, in any case, we don't afraid of Belarusian authorities. We are here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a bit about your perspective on the future, and like, except for obviously continuing the monitoring work, you know, how do you kind of perceive what's to come in terms of political developments, and then obviously also in terms of what just happened in the Polish parliament. Yeah, just, you know, like, what's your understanding kind of the months to come in terms of maybe also advocacy efforts?
I will start this time. I will start by saying that currently I'm actually terrified by what's going on in Poland and the escalation on part of governmental narration about the situation, dehumanization, which is, I guess, even worse than it was last year, dehumanization of migrants, as well as discourse about grassroots activities, which is even worse when one of the ministers is accusing us of things in public communication. It is a really bad situation from my perspective. So the future in Poland, I don't think it's not bright for sure. It's I think we did not expect this to escalate that badly, and yeah, I'm afraid that our actions will be maybe even more difficult in coming months.
I am not optimistic, and I believe maybe we will all share this. For us, we're about to enter a parliamentary season. Soon enough, there will be elections again, and I believe once again the migration question will be used perhaps to garner more votes for the right. It is obviously a very divisive topic. It's very easy to weaponize and to use irregular migration as one of these, yeah, just a tool to divide and conquer. So yeah, in general, I feel like the rise of anti-migrant rhetoric and just in general very nationalistic sentiments in Lithuania, it worries me endlessly. I think I think about it every other day at least. I think about the complete normalization of dehumanization basically of people who look different. I see it in the media. I see it also just not only at this border, but also, let's say, different in the context of different conflicts happening now. I see how in the media, even our national media that is supposed to kind of have some kind of journalistic values and rules to follow, they are using inflammatory words and rhetoric just to push a specific agenda. So I am very worried.
I will try to share a slightly different mood. I am trying really not to think about it. Maybe this would be, and by focusing on the work is the first one. I am slightly also curious where maybe there could be a kind of maybe different, or at least catch the attention of media or something. But and we will work also by promoting the report and the findings in Latvia and maybe it will trigger something else. I'm looking more in that direction. Otherwise, I totally understand and I relate of what Alicia and Aushina are saying. And this, but I still try to find another way where to stand, maybe, and at least to also to preserve myself, maybe.
I'm more pragmatic and generally. I mean, current situation is like, as Ashrin said, still some people coming to Lithuania, but really almost no one coming to Lithuania. Belarus authorities still interested in Lithuania not to close fully the border, so more or less Belarus authorities again controlling Belarus-Lithuanian border. Latvian direction is very popular now because it's much easier to get to Latvia, so Poland, I mean, there were a couple of days, I'm sure you know, when no one tried to cross the border, but it's still people going, not high numbers, and I mean, it will keep going like this. I don't think that, because it's really, it's not about controlled situation, it's just people who always were going there. Of course, the best solution would be to restore train correspondence, because then we will go back to times when at least it was safe. They were coming by train, they were asking this asylum at the border. Yes, they were rejected, but I mean, at least it was not forced. But I mean, due to current political situation, we don't see in next years that the train correspondence will be restored. So unfortunately, people will keep risking their lives going to forests. But as for the advocacy, and I mean, for us, it's very important still to show the humans about all behind all this. I can tell that, for example, in Human Constanta, we did a couple of Instagram shots related to this topic. When, I mean, we recorded this short data about those who died. I mean, like, I am a woman of Afghan origin, and I died on this border. The data that is provided by border committee, just short reels, and this reels was watched by 500,000. Just one of these on our Instagram that is not extremely popular. For us, it's just to show human behind all this and to still struggle with intolerance, discrimination. This is just the most sadness moments of this story, but I mean, this is also the way to show just human in all this way of migration. So we will keep doing this, and also for us this is to show more to relatives how they could contact us, try to talk to us, trying to find the truth about their relatives. That's also why we are doing this, and we will keep distributing information about these cases, because many of these people, I mean, relatives of those died, they don't know where to go, where to find, how to reach authorities, at least of Belarus authorities, because no one will speak their language, of course, at the other side of the phone. So, and also for us, this is about distributing information about general situation, about the route, because there are still a lot of misinformation. And as I said, a lot of people were misinformed by coming. And when they came and spent their last money, they have no other way other than forest. I will tell you now, I mean, we have one case of family from Iraq. When the crisis started, Lithuanian embassy said, we are ready to accept applications, asylum applications in Lithuanian embassy. They were the only one who decided to do this. In order to do this, you had to be legal on the territory of Belarus, and that is almost impossible to have such people. But I mean, we have one family who applied for asylum in Lithuanian embassy almost 2 years ago. They are waiting for the decision for 2 years. During this period, they were keep being in Belarus. The migration officer refused them, but just last month, and they had help. They appealed this decision to court. The court overruled this decision, but during this time, they received a deportation decision in Belarus, so they had to leave Belarus. They received this exit visa that is requested by authorities, and they used it in order to go to the forest. Luckily, we persuaded them, they came back, so now they're waiting to, again, the migration officer to reconsider the decision. But this is like the issue, that at some moment they don't see any other solution other than go to the forest. And still we trying to show that it should be possibilities. We are calling them to apply at Belarus, even like it's not the best country maybe, but for some of them it's much safer than the forest. So I mean, our advocacy is still about information distributing to all the stakeholders.
Thank you. And we would like to put this discussion into a broader European context. So for our next panel, we will invite speakers who working on documenting other migration routes in Europe, the Mediterranean route and the Balkan route. But first we will take a 10 minutes break, so please be back here at 6:20.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Magda, journalist working as a Euronews correspondent in Poland and producer for different media outlets. I'm a journalist that's been covering migration for over 15 years, and I will have a pleasure to lead the discussion tonight with our guests. And I'll just take a seat so I can feel even with you. I wanted to present Anna Grupė, anthropologist, researcher that teaches at the University of Latvia and SSE Riga, that carries monitoring and coordination of humanitarian aid at the Latvian-Belarusian border. We have with us Marianna Hemershak, researcher advisor at the Institute of Technology and Folklore Research in Croatia, author of several books, fellow of the research project Internalizing Borders. Next we have Filippo Furi, who works at the Conference Migration Institute in Paris, anthropologist specialized in migration, who since 2013 has been working on dead and missing persons in migration. He also worked as a consultant for ICRC Forensic Unit in Paris. And we have with us also Alicja Pałęcka, sociologist, researcher, assistant at the Faculty of Sociology at the University of Warsaw, who since 2021 has been involved in activities of Fundacja Ocalenie, who is also an author and co-author of reports about the situation of people on the move in the region. So please welcome our guests. Two of you ladies have already had a chance to speak today, but so let me start with Marianna and Filippo. I wanted to, because you've been researching this topic for way more than this humanitarian crisis started to be present at our borders here in our region. How do you react and how do you perceive yet another border and another borders being affected, but things that you've already researched and experienced?
Thank you. I will start first, although my experience is much shorter than your, Filippo. And my research experience, but also activism is related to the other crisis. It seems like we are living in decades of crisis. And I'm speaking about 2015, 2016, so-called migration crisis, or as it is also termed, a long summer of migration. And maybe in relation to that, I can comment on what I heard before. For that, I would like maybe to show something, the development from 2015 to today. Here I'm speaking as a researcher, as Magdalena mentioned, but also as a researcher who is working on the 4D database related to border deaths in Balkans, which is maintained also by activists. If you can please show the next slide, and here I will come to this 2015. At the beginning, here you can see a list related to border deaths in that region, which goes to 2024, and the list starts in 1973. If you can please show the next slide. Here up in these small letters, you can see 1973 as a year when first known border deaths are recorded in the region. They are related to the border crossing between Yugoslavia and Italy at that period. I will not go in that ancient history now also, although we heard before that crisis, if we can call it crisis at all, here also has its history, that things did not start in 2021. I will just focus on 2015. And here you can see, we can call it a black development or reverse development of border death situation, migrant trail that I'm following. So since 2016, the year when the so-called formalized corridor or Balkan corridor was established, and it was a period of, we can say, formalized or tolerated transit through Balkans, when, according to some estimation, 1 million or less people arrived. We have several dots representing deaths. And coming to 2024, we have landscape full of deaths. The deaths are representing border deaths. What happened? So in 2016, we can say that border happened, or more precisely, a border control happened, because border are the cause of deaths that we are mentioning here. We were mentioning droning, car accident, train accidents, but bottom line is that the borders are the behind these deaths. We can speak also about preventable and premature deaths as border deaths. So these are deaths that are happening because of the borders, and as you can see here, they are not happening only at the borders, because borders are not only geographicalized, they are not only state borders, borders are also inside territories, detention centers represent borders, but borders are also borders of everyday life for some population, meaning that for some people the access to health system, the access to working condition properly or whatever are also bordered, they are excluded, and as we heard before, they are irregularized or illegalized. So we can say that borders and irregularizations are behind this. So in 2016, with the closure of mass transit, the focus became on the control and the practices that were mentioned here so many times, so pushbacks, etc., were employed on that territory, resulting in the increase of border death. Have to speak about these border deaths. We'll probably come to that, but I would just like to point out that although these deaths are framed as accidents in the newspaper, as collateral damage of situation we are all witnessing, we must acknowledge that these deaths are in fact a result of sort of structural violence, or they are a result of the prohibition on doing help, on which we are obliged as citizens. I think in every national criminal law there is a stance that you need to help somebody in distress, and if you don't do that, you can be charged for a year or more, dependingly. Somehow, our legal systems and our practices are encouraging us not to help, not to pay attention on distress, and in that situation, the border deaths that are happening far away from the site. They are invisible, mostly invisible, and because of that, this kind of reports are paying attention on the situation on the borders and the lethal consequences of the border. Maybe it's not in this round. There is no need to go more deeply into how does it happen that so many border deaths are happening today. Why are they happening on the borders on which we had a history of border deaths, but not in such mass numbers? Maybe we can leave that for the next question. I just would like to underline that I'm grateful for the report speaking about this eastern border, because it sheds lights on the things that are also happening on the other land borders. And I must say, not only land borders between EU and non-EU countries, but also within EU countries. We are on the state borders, we are documenting and recording border deaths. So in a way, this report is putting a light on everyday consequences of borders that we have at this moment. I must say, these are not the only borders that could exist or that exist.
Thank you, and it's easy to talk after you because you you opened the discussion. So I think that you mentioned the weaponization of landscape and borders, and I think it's something important because it's if you follow the media, is the sea who's terrible, is the mountain who's terrible, is the forest who's terrible, the desert is terrible. No. Finally, not really. Or yes, but there is other problem that you point, and the criminalization of the solidarity. So you discussed about it before. So I would like just to open and I would like to share the map too, because it's to open the scale a bit. Yeah, this one. I don't know if you can see. This is a map. Made by a friend's cartographer, Nicolas Lambert, who's working with us in Migrants. and he mixed different database in order to produce a kind of total visualization, I mean, image of the border debt and missing. This is an old one, is a 2020, so we can add more. But what I would like to point is that, as you say, there is an historical evolution and geographical evolution of the border debt, who are connected to the evolution of the border control. So you can, if we need to add and prove again, if you check where the border control, was enforced during a period, and you can see that the number of debt not decrease but increase. And so this is the time zero map, but if you check the year, so Nicolas give us just the timeline, but you can see where the people died or get missing. You have first Canary Islands, then we move to Libya, then we move to Arboran, then we move back to Canaria, then we open the Eastern Mediterranean route, and then Balkan, etc., etc. There is an historical evolution of border debt who are connected to the evolution of the border control. So this is one point, and the other one is the fact that the problem of the visibilization. What I mean is, if you go to search, you're gonna find some. Okay. I started to work on border debt in 2009 because I was working in Venice, and one guy died, a young boy died because he was, inside. He was inside a truck coming from Greece to Venice, and he died at the border in the harbor of Venice. So if you go deep and you go, and she started to talk me about a case of a border debt between Slovenia and Italy. And you know about it because you were just there talking with people, and they say, no, it's something present, it's something that we know since the beginning of of the EU, etc. So then you have a spot and our work is go to search and try to understand why, and try to understand and try to react even in order to search for support families and search for bodies, etc. But if you just to have a kind of historical perspective, it's important to mix historical perspective and geographical, and following the borders control, you can see the evolution of the border debt. Only another point I would like to add is the fact that what we mentioned with Karolina Kobylinski was a colleague of mine. We published a book about the management of the bodies in the city of Catania. The body of the people who died in the Mediterranean are disembarked, and were disembarked in the harbor of Catania. What we observe recently is that we recovered less and less bodies, and what we suggest is that now, at least for the sea, we can talk about let's say a new form of control by disappearance. So you are not, if you stop to collect bodies, nobody's dying. Okay, and this is something we can observe, in particular in the Central Med.
Is that your experience, Alicia, as well, with the establishment of the buffer zones, the blue zones? That's going to be a question for you. And as well, how hard it is to document everything that you documented in the report in this region?
Well, I'm really glad that we are talking with guests from other borders or documenting other borders with this experience, because going back to the question which was asked before the break about our future, well, this is it, right? Our future here on the border of EU with Belarus already happened on other borders. We know what happened. We know that militarization is going to lead to more suffering, more border deaths. And exactly, as you, Magda, are asking if this is mine or our experience here is, yes, exactly that, that in 2023, when the militarization very seriously went forward, especially in Poland, the border fence was built, then the electric surveillance was also put up. Then we also had more border deaths, both on Belarusian as on the Polish side. And yeah, said that those numbers from Belarus may be problematic, and there may be some interest of Belarusian authorities to report more deaths. However, in Poland still, we also had more cases registered and more bodies found. So yeah, this experience is the same. We are seeing the same developments, and it is important to remember that we don't need to learn everything from the scratch, as we somewhat did from the beginning of this crisis. Some work was, a lot of work was already been done on in other places, on other borders. So this is something that we should be learning from. The thing is that the governments are probably even better in learning from each other and sharing those European Union, the ways the European Union policy is implemented. So yeah, this is a common experience for sure.
And what we see in those maps is that more and more people are dying or being just hurt at the borders of Europe and internal borders. More routes are opening. But how do you assess the, well, let's call it crisis assessment by the governments? Because you keep facing, as a researcher, you keep observing the same problem everywhere, more and more often, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be resolved in any humanitarian way, or maybe.
I guess exactly that the mention about trying to look in a humanitarian solution does not align with the security which is pushed forward by governments. And I don't even know whether they are meeting at all the humanitarian aspect and the security aspect. They are like operating on different levels. If as activists we are talking about the humanitarian aspect, on state level it's discussed on security aspect, and it seems that there is no dialogue options at this point, just like very, very, very broadly saying. But of course there is, and I would not say that I still preserve, well, if I take for instance the Latvian example, as I mentioned already, this matter of invisibility and not even having the ground open for discussion. What I was trying to, how I was trying at least to try to understand, so how does it come that we are at this point, is that also State Border Guard and state itself is learning these violent practices. In Latvia there is not such a tradition of pushing back people from borders. This is not a common practice, such state violence against, I would not say that state violence was absent in Latvia, not at all, but this kind of practice, as from the other side, those who are engaged in NGOs or humanitarian were also learning. And I guess that this invisibility, well, it's not invisible. We have written the report, we will have some feedback, something is ongoing, but it is really a process. And this process is pretty new, and it unfortunately, as we know, it will just develop. The road is open, and broadly saying, Eastern European migratory road is said to be at least safer, and it does not undermine that the numbers as how we somehow treat also migration or death is in terms of numbers. Of course, numbers like 6 official deaths in 3 years in terms of Latvia, it is a very small number if we see what's happening when one boat is drowning in the Mediterranean. But it doesn't, these deaths are still very complicated. Due to the expanded the border, if you imagine 173 kilometers of the border and the number of people are trying to cross, and those who don't manage, it's also the length and these winter conditions and swamps. It makes it very complicated. And I will just put a point to this. What I will say that this is a process and a pretty new one.
Marianna, but do you have the impression, or from your expertise, that violence and pushbacks are actually effective as defending borders?
They are ineffective in a way that the prices of crossing is rising, and the price, I mean on the price in monetary terms, but also in price in border debt. So in a way what we see that border control is redirecting people into the more violent or more dangerous landscapes and areas. And this, in the last panel we heard several examples of people who came to Belarus or in Vilnius and who did not have any other option but to go further. In that way, no wall, no border guard, even no shooting will stop. At that point, it's a question of life and death. But I think what we must ask here is, what is the policy behind that puts that as an option in migration, in movement, in such a natural thing as it is movement from one point to the other. Why for some it is so dangerous, why it must happen in the trucks, in the bottom of boats or in the forest, why do we need to ask for train? So how did this development happen that at one point regular transportation as train is from 19th century seems as a racket in the context where some mobilities are forbidden or presented as forbidden or illegalized or irregularized. And when we speak about numbers, I think it's maybe even better not to speak about numbers but about symptoms. So every death, every closed border, how small a border wall gets into this more broader picture of a Europe which is fortifying itself on one hand, and on the other hand is externalizing border control to the borders. Whether would that be eastern borders as here, so internal borders by Dublin and Schengen, or whether that would be borders across the Mediterranean Sea in Africa. So in that constellation, I think we need to think about border control as being totally ineffective in gaining the goal it sets in front of itself, so to stop migration. It's not doing that, but it's doing some other things to our societies and to the people who are practicing that mobility, which will have and have still big consequences.
What's your experience, Filippo?
No, I agree with you, Marianne. I mean, the feeling is that we are facing the externalization of the violence. So the question is for me, is it work? Finally, yes, it's work. I mean, they justify with the arguments of control and security, blah, blah, the possibility to extend the control and the violence of the border out of the European territory. So we have cases as an internal border, that, etc., etc. But if you check the evolution, it's something who start to disappear from the continent and start to be invisible because it's outside of the continent. I mean, in Italy, we can talk about violence against bodies and no respect of the human rights, the right of to identification, and I mean, the fact that the family are not part of the process, etc. And it's a violence. But it's not the same violence. So a few days ago, we had another the UN. I don't know who exactly, but UN discovered another mass graves between Tunisia and Libya. And the mass grave is because the Tunisians start to deport people and sell people to Libyans. And if something goes wrong, they are killed and just disappear. And the same, talking about externalization, the fact of the number of deaths in the desert increase is connected to the fact that, for example, that the European Union, let's say, pushed the Niger to publish a law. Now they cancel it, but during 5 years, I think, a law criminalizing the smuggling, but even the help, the solidarity in the desert. And we surprise the number of border deaths between the Niger and Libya increase. I mean, so the process of externalization of violence is working, and the logic of European, let's say, policy. But I'm talking about Italy. Let's say Italy say we need to do the job to Tunisia or Albania. I don't know what will be. We're going to observe with the future in Albania. But if you start to leave the people in Albania waiting for the exam of the asylum request, and if they are denied, they will not go back home, or they will probably start and search to enter again without having the possibility to apply again. So we create this kind of we produce this violence.
Alicia, I'm also having this impression that it's, especially now here in Poland, it's becoming more and more difficult to also talk about the violence at the border and about this humanitarian aid that you, as a part of Ocalenie and other organizations, are actually providing. And it doesn't really help also make it the problem visible and heard. How do you feel about the atmosphere, the narration around such events, like even publishing this report, I mean, in their circumstances?
Yeah, current situation in Poland makes the issue visible in a very wrong way. I would say it is very acute now, and very intense the discourse right now around the border with Belarus and around migration overall. But yeah, you are right. It doesn't help at all. It is intense in a very wrong way, so it doesn't help in making visible the actual tragedy that is going on. And because the media attention and public attention and especially politicians' attention is directed into the subjects which are very marginally connected with the issues that we are talking about, which are border deaths. But it is very easy to hijack this whole issue of migrants being at the border to show how violent they are, and with the history of another tragedy, which is a soldier, very young soldier death. It is also very easy for, especially for politicians, to direct the attention of the public towards the security issues, as Anna said before, and to further further militarization and to gain more and more acceptance for it, even from those parts of public which weren't supporting it before. So yes, the situation in those terms is like really really difficult right now, because as I said in the beginning, it makes the issue very visible, but in a very, very wrong way, taking the attention from the suffering of actual people who are there in Belarus waiting to come into Poland and being exposed to violence on Belarusian side, probably being also in high risk of dying there as well. But this subject really disappeared. And with this, also the importance of our activities, of the activities of grassroots groups, is not seen as important anymore. Very contrary to the situation at the beginning of the crisis. Like in 2021, 2022, the public opinion was very divided, but still there was a huge support for this case, for grassroots activities and bringing humanitarian aid. Right now, I am afraid that even this report, of course, it may be used in a very wrong way by some media or politicians. So I am afraid of that too, that every action currently can be taken up and like twisted in the media. Yeah, it is a absolutely difficult and devastating situation, actually.
You mentioned the point of humanitarian, you too. I think it's important to understand and discuss even this perspective, because I mean, when in Canada we had a group, a research group named Dispositif militaro-humanitaire, how the militarization and the humanitarian help can work together. And if you check the strategy in the Mediterranean, so I moved the focus, but it's the same, is if you apply the base of humanitarian action, no critical, without any, without questioning the responsibility of the state, etc., it can, it can be accepted. If you go just a little bit further, you are out and you are a criminal. If you check I think there is a very interesting movie called L'Ordre des Choses, the order of things, okay, who explain how the Italian government tried to implement the Libyan Coast Guard before the creation of the search and rescue zone in Libya. Now we're going to have the Tunisian one. So. It means create a new apparatus of humanitarian apparatus there, okay? And the Italian government asked to the NGOs to sign a kind of agreement, rules, in order to do what we want you do and stop. And some organization refuse to do it. We are in the same building of MSF. MSF is one of the organizations who decided to refuse it. And strange, a few months ago, MSF with other NGOs was attacked by the persecutor because of blah, 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 and they had the process and a few weeks ago. I mean, the idea of the humanitarian, is something. Sorry, I opened this window, but I think it's important to consider who is the humanitarian action, who is the possibility of the humanitarian, and can the humanitarian is or not connect to the state apparatus. The Red Cross. I was working for the ICC. I'm talking as a individual. A researcher, independent. Okay, but the ICRC, the work we produce with the ICRC is more on organization of the management of the bodies and trying to underline the criticities, etc. But if you check the functioning of the even some Red Cross, national Red Cross, is a kind of problems in order to do stuff and not do other stuff. So if you have the shipwreck and the states are quite probably responsible, it's very hard to talk with families, it's very hard to collect witnessing, etc., etc. So the humanitarian apparatus can decide to not. So this is the geometry variable, I don't know what I can say, of humanitarian is something to put into the discussion, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it is a very important point that even like connecting what Filippo just said with what I said before, that even in this situation which is also really against us as grassroots organizations, we really shouldn't give in and still be able to, or not. We should not stop this practice of criticizing the government, especially in this situation from last couple of days, when we were also here talking about militarization, right? So in Poland right now, this militarization is further inscribed not only physically at the border with the wall, but also further inscribed into the law with the new law. I will simplify, but let's say allow to actually shoot to people, right? But then there are also those difficult choices humanitarian make, that if people do not talk with the government and they don't agree to their conditions, then they may not be able to provide aid at all, which is also a very difficult decision to make, right?
Can I just comment shortly? What are we witnessing? I think in the last few decades we are witnessing sort of humanitarization of control also, which make us hard to recognize that we need to speak about structural deaths or border deaths because they are not usually the result of direct violence, but outsourced violence, so-called slow violence. And in that terms, it would be also important to speak not only about deaths, but also about injuries and different kinds of injuries that are happening at our borders. And with that kind of approach, maybe it would be easier to recognize that that's happening on the borders are not necessarily a result of physical violence, but are the result of prolonged situation of violence that some people are living or are exposed to. I must just say that pushback with food package or not at the end is a pushback. And what are we witnessing? We are witnessing adoption of some humanitarian gestures into the system of control that makes even harder all the attempts to expose the violence, because it covers the violence in this humanitarian aspect. As Alicia, you were mentioning, answering on the question, how can reports as such make a change? They can make a change, but it is very hard to do that in the situation when we are faced with systematic dehumanization of people who are actors of these reports, and with such a hidden structural violence that goes very, very deeply into the structure of society. I would say it's really so. In a sort of way, humanitarian, making it more humane. It is at the end probably maybe victimizing, but it's a question how big moves can be achieved from that position.
But do you feel that, because you Anisha said that at the very beginning the response of the public opinion was very different, and it just changed over the last 2 years. And do you think we as societies in Europe, we got used to this violence and used to those deaths?
if it is questioned for me, I would say we are used to indifference towards these deaths. So because in context in which they are happening, they are framed as migration as a problem that is not ours, which is wrongly, totally unacceptable, because they are not problems that are ours and others in society as such. But there are grassroots groups and others who are I think, who are challenging that indifference. And when I say others, I'm also thinking on locals, not only on organized or organizations, who somehow need to live with this extreme violence, and in response to that can be more violence or opposite to that, making some practices that are opposing the violence that is part of our societies. Because what is happening on the border has its effects on what is happening everywhere. It's so evident. You don't need to be a sociologist to notice that beating somebody on the border with no will have consequences on the society. Is tolerating. At least it presents as sort of tolerating the violence for the start.
Filippo, what's the situation of the people whose relatives died on the move, or when they are trying to collect the bodies, take part in the process, get some information, identify the bodies? Because one thing is the person dying, but it doesn't stop the whole situation. It's not the end, really.
Let me give you an example. Just join the previous question. Last year, we had, yesterday I was talking with a friend who's working with the families of the people who died, missing, disappeared because the body is still in the water, of the Pylos shipwreck. And if you remember, the Pylos shipwreck was exactly at the same time with the, the small, now I don't remember the small submarine who tried to go to visit the Titanic. And with a friend who was completely shocked. One side, the voyeurism of the society for the 3 or 4 people who okay, and on the other side, a shipwreck with 700 people who disappear, and I think is one of the most deep space in the Mediterranean. So it's impossible to recover the boat. So we accept to leave them in the sea. But the family is still searching and asking, for example, for something who's completely, the legal point of view, missing, means because we have it for, in Italy we have it for missing people who, after a few years, the family can have a certificate of missing. We don't say the people, the person died, but the people still missing. So you can do, and in terms of administrative, etc., you can go further, etc. The family cannot have this kind of document. So there is a very concrete problems concerning the non-identification of the body, and not the fact that the body are not recovered. So many friends talk about the impossible mourning. Impossible mourning, because if you don't have the body, it's very hard to accept the disappearance. So the idea is support the families. Means try to work, and this is what we try to do with the ICRC report. Try to point the problem of the disappearance of the body and the necessity to recover the bodies, in order to allow the family to just giving you some figures. The 25% of the bodies in the Central Med are recovered, only 25%. So we have a problem about recovering the bodies. And if you don't have bodies, okay, the family, how can we help family? How can we support families? then in this the 25% of the 25%, talking about Italy, is identified. The rest still unidentified, missing. For the family, still missing. So the idea, if you talk technically, what we try to do is first try to push the states to assume the necessity to recover bodies, and they sign in. If you go to check the Global Compact for Migration, they signed the Objective 8. The Objective 8 mean say we're gonna engage ourselves in support families, etc., etc. 2019, nothing happened, and the European Community refused to engage in this process. So, and the state are not focusing. I mean, the problem is how can we, what we can do as civil society actors in order to support family and try to strengthen the agency of family to ask for justice, ask for truth, and try to go deeper in the search, support the search. And on the other side, as civil society, how to do, let's say, advocacy or force the states to assume the responsibility. Not only, I mean, the responsibility when they are responsible of the shipwreck, etc., but even the responsibility to manage, I mean, to assume the fact that the identification of the body are not mandatory. Is mandatory only if the persecutor asks for identification because it's necessary for the investigation. If not, the persecutor say, I don't mind. So if you want to do something, even with the states, is to try to make the advocacy and force the state to assume this responsibility to identify the body that we can recover. And let me open again a little bit more. Not only the states where the body are found, but try to, I mean, ask the intervention even of the country of departure. Because if you are alone, a family alone, you are without any help, any support, and you are just you facing the, let's say, authority of another country, etc. So we need to ask even that the state of departure to support families. I don't think I answered completely to your question, but
no. But is that another aspect of the other rights that has to be protected as well? It's not only the person that is moving, but it's also, you know, the whole family and the whole chain of relatives. But would you? Yeah, you can add. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I will add one more thread to this because Philip was talking especially about the ability to mourn the person who have died, but there is also this issue of legal limbo in which the family is if there is no identification, no confirmation of death of a person, and this is something that I think Polish public, probably Latvian, Lithuanian as well, is still not aware because this subject, as Anna said, in this region is quite new. So we still have no knowledge and awareness of how the consequences of each of these deaths, how grave they are. It's not only about people who died on our territory, it's about the whole families, exactly which stayed in the country of origin or are someplace else. And yeah, this formal limbo, by formal limbo I mean, for example, a woman who is still considered married while she is not, children who are without parents, but it's not visible anywhere in formal form, and so on and so on.
This is something you, Anna, mentioned before. So from what you say, we can very easily capture that there is a big difference between what state and the NGOs or civil society does, and it's very I mean, it's a parallel word. Why states are sort of defending the borders, as they say, and the only people working on the well-being of the humans crossing the borders are actually grassroots initiatives. Do you see it this way, that we just part it both ways, and this is how the roles are given at the moment?
It is a very puzzling question and a very, very puzzling situation, I would say, because I cannot imagine of at least one example where the person who is trying to migrate to a particular destination, and one has in mind, more likely a destination where the person is willing to go, not an instance, for instance, when arriving at the Latvian border and then ongoing the procedure, for instance, if the person is detained then or has applied for asylum, there is no one example of where state violence is not present. It is just captured through. And of course, we can talk in a very simplistic way also for economic means which are assigned from the state to different government agencies who are competent, for instance, for integration, or with it just really underfinanced, and on the other side, the border defense itself, it's super. The financial means which are put to the border protection are enormous, and yet this paradox. Again, I will talk about Latvia since it's something, a region I know the most. And here we can just turn, and I don't think that it's only Latvia. Migration in Latvia is so present through student visas, for instance, something that is so much. Migration, society is well dealing while integrating people from different countries, and they're at the border. And with the situation, well, actually, the numbers are very low if we take into account who arrive and try to migrate in this way. But this is where this, I would say, hatred and this of me feeling uncomfortable with migration, it is placed at the border and within the violence there. Meanwhile, I'm living in the society where migration is very present. Also, Latvians are migrating to other countries. People are coming to Latvia, and it's all ongoing, and it's really paradoxical. How does it come that state violence and this migration is so politicized, and what is the aim of it?
This is what you said, Marianna, just before we started the panel, that you have in Croatia more tourists than actually migrants they are trying to.
Yeah, of course. I think last year there were 20 million tourists, and we are speaking, when we speak about irregular migration, about several thousands at most. Dozen or hundreds, it depends, but in comparison to millions, it's not a thing. I think migration is systematically made a problem, and specific kind of migration. We are not speaking about student migration or work migration. We are speaking about irregularized migration that is sort of a laboratory for exercising different tools and different modes of organizing and somehow handling the population. So in that respect, I don't really see personally that we can speak about migration as a problem in terms of number or in terms of some consequences. It is only a question why it became a problem. This is a bigger question of this panel, I must say. But can I just come back to the question, what about states and who is somehow facilitating the process of identification? I think it would be very naive to expect that states who are somehow prosecuting people in a way that they are fleeing from these states or they are pushed back from the other states will have a leading role in any kind of procedures related to the people. But in my experience, there are some instances on state level, but speaking more about local level, where state or state officers are trying to support the identification. What is lacking, certainly is lacking, that states are not using the capacity they have to organize, to make a systematic, first of all, the stop of violence, and then eventually, not only so preventing the violence, but also ensuring a repatriation, reparations if the violence happens.
So do you think, Filippo, those deaths could have been prevented?
Develop. Yes, for sure, for sure. I mean, the possibility to move. We published a book with Migrants about the freedom of movement. It's easy. I mean,
we didn't read that
for hours. I mean, but I mean, if the people were able to move free, probably they will not search for dangerous way. They will not use the small metallic boat from Tunisia. They will not cross the Passo della Morte in between Italy and France, etc. So. Yes, for sure. But the problem is that the border control is one of the let's say the pillar of the European politics since the beginning. Let's say because we never stop. I mean, if you know that the Frontex, you was talking about the budget. Frontex is the only European agency who, with the budget, is like increasing like this, and who justify. I mean, we discuss with friends more in theoretical way. You know, the European identity. The feeling is that the European identity is just based on the capacity to defend the borders, and inside is a mass. We are fighting every time, every day. But if we have this idea of border protection, border security, we can say we are European. I think we lost something. And what is the paradox? What is the hypocrisy? I mean, something is that we still defend our, historical. Position of a continent of human rights, of blah 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 blah. So we produce an image of ours. I think they are not, even the people who was talking about European as they are not believe themselves. They just use this it's like a dogma. I don't know.
But how to speak about the human rights when this all is happening and could have been prevented, as you said?
No. I mean, when you go to France and you say we are the country of the human right because the revolution, blah 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 blah, and then you know what they are doing. You say, and something we lost a step in the chain, and it's not enough to say we are we defend the human rights. So what I'm saying is paradoxical. What is clear is that we try to, the fiction is we defend the human rights inside of our continent by allowing the third countries to do violation to protect our territory from it's something strange. No?
It's quite a complex situation. So how do you feel, Alicia, hearing those slogans and then, receiving the public opinions, comments on what you do?
Mm-hmm. I'm very worried and terrified with, public opinion is one thing, or political discourse is one thing, but there are also laws that are being written which show, for example, some parts of the agreement on migration and asylum, which will show that the whole idea of human rights is eroding in Europe. And it is going to be undermined formally and legally right now. So, this is a strange situation we are in, and I must say, while we are still confronted with those slogans that we are talking about. So those changes perhaps will be somehow inscribed in law. For example, the possibility to not get the request for international protection, which for us is still an important tool to say that, okay, those laws in Poland, in Latvia, in Finland right now, just a few days ago, it was agreed for by the government, for what we call the pushback law is also implemented there. Now there is a future before us in which those legal acts will not be illegal anymore because they are illegal in terms of international law, but perhaps Europe will allow for those solutions.
Sorry, just to add a word, because it's we discuss about with colleagues. There is two things what I would like to because one is referring the space, the fact that we are talking about border violence, but the law are the implementation of the security law. For example, a law, and something happened many years ago in the States, but now we have the same in Europe, the borderization of the territories. So if you consider that the person who crossed the border is dangerous because you have the possibility to apply the border law to catch the person in Nice, who is 80 kilometers from the border. So section of entry, and say they are extending something we have in France already, who's the zone d'attente. The zone d'attente means that you are in a particular zone, space, where you are not, where the law of the country are not applied because you are in the limbo. The problem is that this situation at the beginning was applied only to the border space and the airport, for example. So friends of mine worked 50 years ago on the border zone, on the zone d'attente in the airport of Roissy in France. Now, this space, extraterritoriality, concern your body. Even if you move to the doctor, if we decide that you are extraterritorial, we can apply this law to your body and follow you around the territory. So you put the extraterritoriality into the territory. So the exception law into the territory, not only on the border.
And when you just mentioned PACT, we must say that developments you are mentioning regarding the national laws are somehow already implemented. I don't know exactly to which you were referring, but are implemented in the Pact on Asylum and Migration, which needs to be still to implement it in the national laws. But there in preamble you can read that some previous solutions such as hotspots or I don't know, waiting zones in Hungary are implemented to being a part of regular procedures that will be done on European borders, and things such as fiction of entry or, for example, border procedures which are in a line somehow going towards legalizing practices that are denounced now as illegal. So we are coming after the problem of humanitarianization to the problem of over-legalization of things. You don't need to be to know human rights chart or whatever to know that some things are not done to others, human and non-humans.
I'll ask all of you the very last question, how you see the future, because we started with 1, 2, 3 migrant routes. Now we have more and more, so what we are bracing for.
Okay. if I put myself in the most pessimistic mood I can imagine myself, I see a very bad future, especially in regards, for instance, in Latvia, where the topic that we have not raised is that, to some extent, Latvia is also playing its hybrid war with Russia at the border through migration, and this militarization of also Latvia and other countries, and this kind of willingness to engage in some kind of more dynamic geopolitical this activity, and migration as being one of these scapegoats where we can just put also this everything. So if I put myself in this mood, I see a pretty dark future.
I totally agree, but there are futures and futures, and after this kind of future, we can, or in parallel with it, we can imagine future in which we will not speak about roots for some people, but we will speak about regular mobility for all, or however we will call it. So I think historically we know that there were different borders and different systems and different statuses, and the fact that we are facing this ugly or very ugly one does not mean that there are not here the others that we need somehow to think about them, to wish them, to hope for them. I think we don't have the privilege to give up, and this is some position I would like to keep as far as I can.
Let me be positive.
No.
You
Italians.
No, Italians always. I think yes, the situation is worse. Number of death, border death is increasing, etc., etc. But we have two new elements who, I mean, and for me are important. So first, the capacity of the families to mobilize themselves, the support of civil society, and the networking. If I remember 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was quite impossible because of the non-connection, lack of technology, etc., etc. So this is one point: the capacity and the desire of the families to be in touch and to be, struggle together, to go together. And the second, the technical capacity. Because till a few years ago, only the state was managing the techniques. Now we start to have counter investigation, we can produce our database. We have the capacity to do the report you produce. I mean, there is the capacity, technical capacity, the possibility to collaborate between research and civil society, who can produce some evidence. So I just give you an example. Of our friends of forensic oceanography produce a report, a video report named "Left to Die Boat," concerning a boat left into the sea without any form of intervention and support. And finally, with what the elements they collect in their interviews, etc. Now, so it takes many years, but now the French government reopen the process and try to identify the responsible of this case. So we have the capacity, and we need to assume this fact, and we.
Yeah, I guess I don't have anything to add after what my colleagues said. As I guess I was quite clear while saying that I see the future rather grim, but after what you are saying, I can also see how those pockets of resistance will be operating still, and perhaps being more and more capable of doing their thing. And also, I guess this possibility to connect with the families and to organize together is a very important thread that we should remember about here in our region as well, which still is something new or not really considered on the Belarusian border, or not done systemically. So this is, for example, for us something to learn about and to implement, introduce. Yeah, we will be doing our job, I guess.
So, thank you very much for being here. This is an active practitioner of the freedom of speech. I'll invite you to take the opportunity to ask questions, if there are any. We have someone.
I have very non-precise question, and I even don't know how to make it more precise. But I was thinking maybe we are sitting like in a social bubble, that we are aware what is happening. We follow the news. We search for the news. But I was wondering, because somehow I know it's how the society is informed in Poland, like what is in news leads. I think the right-oriented media are saying that soldiers are protecting us from rapists, and I think Polish society is like really afraid, maybe because they only got those news. And I was wondering, what is the level of awareness in different societies in Europe, in different countries? Do they, I don't know, can you say that in other countries societies are more informed or are having better news? Or how it looks, the information to the public?
I think it's very contextual, and I can speak only maybe in comparison to Croatian situation, where the violence at the border was somehow always connected with the accession to Schengen, or with the need to protect the border of the center. So it was never until recently used as sort of propaganda for making a fear, although of course secularization was present in media and dehumanization, of course. But I think migration, especially when we speak about irregularized migration, so clandestine, hidden migration, it's a perfect subject for any kind of instrumentalization or manipulation, as we see. You can say anything, because those who are the subject of that speech cannot speak for themselves. And somehow also, going back to some knowledge about how media and society functions, I could say people are also not dummies. At some point it's evident that what is propaganda and what is not. But this is really also contextual, depending at what point of historical moment some fears are fed or not, and how. This is what I could say. It's really contextual. I think there could be some connections made between how border control and border violence is framed in countries such as Poland, Lithuania, Hungary maybe, and how is it in Slovenia, Croatia, how is it in Italy. There are big differences, I would say, but there are not so many differences in type of violence. Yes, we have these peaks of violence and maybe somewhere more direct violence, but the violence is everywhere at the end. So it's also important to have in mind, and it somehow also maybe helps to unpack this instrumentalization situation. So somebody wants to add?
Okay, I can just add an example, since really like my field is geographically is Latvia-Belarus border since 2018, especially borderland inhabitants before 2021, and then refocusing on the very same people. While I was working on the report, I returned to many I encountered who are just really next to the border, where the fence is built, where they encounter it, just willing to investigate their knowledge about death and disappearances. And at one point I just gave up after, I don't know on which count, and these are elderly people living Russian-speaking, and they were saying one after another, it is just not possible No one is pushing back people in winter. And they are having the very same headlines where it is written black on white that people are returned to Belarus. And there is just the incapacity to see that actually this is taking place.
Do we have another question? Yes.
Hello all, thanks for this presentation, a very interesting topic. I would like to just, now you touched the topic about the borders and the security of the borders. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about not European country. For example, in Chile, I don't know if you know what's happening in Chile now. And there are so many, Venezuelans that coming, and mostly the migrants, they're irregular and they're actually threatening the civil society because they're coming. The border was not controlled at some point, so lots of Venezuelans came to the country with arms. And the point is that what's happening now in the country, it's like getting very hard because they're killing. They have arms, so they start to kill people. Like it was like 11 persons killed last weekend. I got the information, and in different parts of Chile, and the same. And I was there in April, and really I felt that people, Chileans already, they are not like open to the Venezuela because they know that what's happening. Like starting from that they put loudspeakers on the beach, or for example selling some food which is not made from the real meat, until the death, for example. So that's the problem that Chile at some point did not have the control of the border, so all of them entered. And I don't know, in this situation, I don't, maybe in the European Union never happened this, I don't know, or happened in some kind. That's.
And what was the question?
I mean, like the insecurity. I mean, like what to do, for example, if such criminal migrants coming and we don't know, and for example, they are doing this narco trafficking or smuggling of people because this is really happening, and the country lost control. So what to do in such situation? I know maybe this.
I mean, in Poland we lost control immediately. With the pushbacks and clandestine migration. The trafficking, of course, is going on, so criminal operations are going on in Poland, and the state can control it to some extent, but it also actually those actions and militarization of the border and not respecting international law also helps those criminal networks to develop, because the immigration need to be clandestine or naturally become clandestine in those situations. So I would say that it is already happening actually. It's just a kind of hidden in the political discourse regarding secure border. Because this is how it is presented. This is like called this border spectacle actually. So the border is presented as safe with our border guards and our soldiers protecting it, while actually there are many very wide operations which are criminal and hidden.
Yes, no, I would like just to add. To information is the freedom of movement probably is one of the solutions that I can consider in order to reduce the impact of trafficking. On the other side, in Italy, for example, we focus every time and always on the smuggler on the other side, but the connection, the possible connection with the let's say illegal world in Italy is not even considered. First. Second, we build especially after the terrorist attack in France, etc., we build we justify the implementation of the border control because of the security reason, because of terrorism. In Italy, Salvini was saying every day, yes, but probably one terrorist is inside of this boat. No, every day. So people feel okay. If you go to check the number of terrorists we know of France in Paris attack, for example, they are not coming from outside. They are just people living in the territory, second, third generation, living in a very completely marginalized society in the banlieue in the middle of nowhere, completely cut off the society, discriminated, who are, yes, into this radicalization movement. But the problem is not outside, the problem is inside, and the problem is how we manage with the interculturalism and etc. and the difference of and let me. So the problem is the delirium of our national identity. I'm talking about it as Italian. So the Italian identity, we need to preserve the Italian identity. Italy is a fiction. We created Italy 100 years ago. We speak different languages. No, it's true. We speak different languages. We cannot communicate with each other because we don't understand each other. And we say, no, but we are Italian. We need to preserve our identity. Culturally and even genetically. No.
You talked before that we have good law, and we know that we have human rights and a lot of special law to protect human rights. And can you see any chance to use that law against the authorities to change something?
I will just... so yes, some border deaths are also challenged on different courts, on national courts, on human rights courts. Some decisions negative for countries were also made and published, but we didn't see a political change. So in that spirit, we must not give up the legal fights. I think they are super important, but not have all cards in that. If I was clear. So definitely, this is ongoing struggle for long now that border violence and border deaths are challenged on the court, and we have experts at this point who are working hard on exposing the mechanism also within the courts, which are not maybe functioning as they should. But this is only one line, I would say, of solution or getting to some future that will not be so grim as we can imagine it now.
So that would be the end. No more questions. Thank you very much for everyone. Do we? As I said, I'm a freedom of speech practitioner, so that's going to be the last one.
Hello, good evening. We are just standing in front of implementation of the Pact on Asylum and Migration. And I'm curious if you would like to comment if the Pact, from your perspective, as we have, so diverse, geographically diverse speakers today. So I'm curious whether you see any positive aspects of the Pact that is going to be implemented. I'm following up on our guest's idea to seek for some hope today because I feel that I'm living absolutely hopeless. Thanks.
Well, no. Now I'll put myself in the optimistic mood, and I can do it that from time to time. What I have heard, it was one of the authorities of Frontex in one of the interviews emphasizing that if there's one thing that he would like to see is the transparency. and transparency at the border procedures, regardless that, well, okay, now maybe I'm naive, but still I had this hope that it might be, what we will do with what we can observe, because like why I'm saying is in Latvia this is this untransparency within the border procedures. Pushbacks are inscribed in national legislation, so okay, just show how you do them. And this is somewhat what I was hearing and looking for a hope within the pact.
Now I will be the pessimistic one and maybe say that I see, reading what the others who are the experts in the field said, I see the pact is bringing a legalization of solutions such as pushback or procedures or some fast procedures. So in that way, I do not expect of pact anything more, but that it will fail somehow. There is still a few years ahead of our governments to get agreement, final agreement to that, to implement it. But even when that happens, some sort of optimism is kept for the people who will live with that pact, as we know from every other situation. Legal optimism has its limits, so in a way what pact brings we will see in practice. I think the idea to detain so many thousands of people on the borders, to keep them for 12 weeks, I think, for border procedure closed, and then deport them who knows where, I think it will not, in practice it will not work. I don't know how can it work, but let's see.
I have just a map, but I cannot show you. It's on my phone, it's like small. Is a friend, the Filip Rekakevich is a very wonderful cartographer who, and this is a very old one, but referring to the pact, let me think that we must actualize this map, and is a critical map connecting the evolution of the European border control policies and the number of that, and it's very clear. So unfortunately, the pact is the last step of a process we started 25 years ago, and we can see the effect of this logic, let's say.
So once again, thank you very much for coming. Thanks to our guest for coming. I hope you all get the copies of the report. You can read it, spread it, and it's important to do so. Thank you very much.